So in the process of filming for part 2 of my underrated and unique stance cars video series, I came across a car that I thought was really slick and I hadn't seen it in a long time. In any sort of races or events or stance shows or anything like that, I really hadn't seen this car. So after recording for that video, I thought, why not throw on some power upgrades and see if this thing can't drift. The car I'm actually talking about is the Hijack Chameleon, which is one of those cars I'm sure you guys probably haven't heard much about in a while, but it turns out that this thing is an amazing drift car, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to set it up for drifting and also exactly what you need to do to drift it, because it's really unlike any other drift car you guys are familiar with. So a little bit of background: the Hijack Chameleon has actually been in the game since day one. So all the way back in 2013 when GTA Online dropped, you were able to buy this car if you had a certain version of the game. On next generation consoles, you can purchase this car off of Legendary Motorsport for $100,000, which if you think about it, it's really not that bad of a price considering that there are other cars like the Raptor UT that are slightly more expensive and the cars are about the same in terms of driftability. Also, in case you guys were interested, this car is based off of the Fisker Karma in the front and kind of the overall styling of the car, and then the rear is from the Maserati Gran Turismo. So now that I've kind of introduced you guys to the Chameleon, I'm going to talk about how you should upgrade it in order to drift. Pretty much the formula for upgrading this car in Los Santos Customs is very similar to how you would set up a lot of the other drift cars in this game. So go for any power upgrades and all power upgrades that you can. For this particular car, you can upgrade the engine and the turbo, but you cannot do any sort of transmission upgrades because the car is electric. Also go for the lowest suspension possible, so make sure it's dropped all the way to the ground, and also apply some slippery tires. So this could be either muscle or SUV wheels. Those tend to be the most slippery tires. You can use others if you prefer. I'm sure it really wouldn't make much of a difference with this car, but I know in others that's kind of been the formula for it. So try whichever one you want and see what works for you. An important reminder for you guys who are modifying this car: if you haven't really tried other drift cars in the game, you cannot purchase bulletproof tires for them. And that's the same with this car. You can't purchase bulletproof tires because that'll prevent you from being able to manually lower it and drift it, and I'll explain why a little bit more in a minute. So real quick side note, once you've fully upgraded this car for drifting purposes, so for me that excludes any brake upgrades and armor upgrades and other external upgrades, you can do them if you want. I prefer not to, just for cost purposes. If you upgrade it just for the power upgrades and maybe throw on a different set of wheels, the total cost will actually be just over $200,000, which in retrospect isn't all that bad. So if you guys are really strapped for cash and you're looking for a great drift car, this might be the one for you. So for you guys who are more familiar with Grand Theft Auto 5 drifting might already know this step, but I'm going to explain it anyway. Basically, the reason why you can't put bulletproof tires on this car is because you're actually going to have to damage it with a weapon to lower it to the ground. So this involves shooting the bottom of the brake disc. You guys will see in the clip that I'm showing on the screen. I'm not shooting anywhere else on the car except within the wheel towards the bottom of the brake disc. Now you notice that when I do that, after about a full magazine worth of ammo, you'll see the car drop twice to the ground. So you should do that for every single wheel, and if you get in the car and you notice that it's a lot more slidey, then you know you've done it right. Make sure again that you keep an eye out for when the car lowers to the ground, because that will obviously signify that you're doing it right. If you do it too much or if you shoot too long, then you'll actually end up damaging the car. Interesting side note about this car as well, this car is actually super weak and is very susceptible to damage. So if you're going to lower it, be careful when you do. On this car, if you end up damaging it too much when you're lowering it, the car will actually just stop working altogether. So be careful when you're going to lower this car, especially because it's really weak. Maybe if you guys want to consider applying 20% or 40% armor in Los Santos Customs beforehand, that might serve you well. So now we're going to get to the main part of the video where I talk to you guys about drifting this car. Because the Chameleon is an electric car, it actually helps it out a lot when it comes to drifting, and it makes it, in my opinion, to be one of the best drift cars in the game. And this is for two reasons. The first of which is you actually don't ever have to worry about the car upshifting and falling out of power, and also because it's electric, that pretty much means that power is instant. So what this translates to is an all-around excellent drift car that is very, very easy to drift. So for drifting, all you really need to know how to do to keep this thing sideways is to tap the handbrake repeatedly. So when I was drifting this car for the first time and really learning how it worked, I thought of a pretty simple formula that you guys will need to follow when you drift it. And that is basically the frequency with which you tap that handbrake will increase with your speed. So that means that the faster that you go, the more you're going to need to rely on that handbrake to keep the car sliding. You're going to need to tap it and maybe hold it for a little bit longer to keep the drift going. For slower to medium speed drifts, you're going to tap the handbrake less frequently frequently, but you're going to make sure that you do it consistently. So almost think about it like a rhythm of a song or like a cadence. Make sure you're tapping the handbrake rhythmically almost, so that way you can consistently keep the tires loose. If the car keeps straightening out at a higher speed, you know that you're probably going to need to rely on the handbrake a bit more to slow it down to a driftable speed. And also, if you notice that at slower to medium speed drifts, if the car bogs and slows down, you're going to need to use the handbrake a bit less so you aren't killing your drifts by making the car slow down too much. So that's my general guide to drifting this car. Again, it's a pretty simple formula, but you guys will need to obviously play around and practice with it a bit to get used to drifting this car, because again, it's different than any other gas-powered drift car that is in this game. And also, two other tips. Number one, this car can't hold that much steering angle without spinning out because it's got a super long wheelbase and it's a really light car, and because of that, it's pretty hard to recover if you ever give it too much angle and you feel it start to spin out. It's fairly hard to recover, so just keep that in mind and don't throw a lot of angle at it to begin with, and you should be good to go. Number two is that this car takes damage extremely quickly, and I mentioned this earlier when we were manually lowering it, and while this actually doesn't affect the car's ability to drift at all, you need to be careful that you're not smashing it into every wall that you see. In recording this video, I actually ended up destroying this car only after crashing it 3 or 4 times, so definitely avoid damaging this car as much as you can so that way you don't destroy it completely. So that's about it for this video. I'm gonna let the rest of the drift clips play out for you guys just to see how well this car is with drifting, but I hope that I showed you everything you guys need to be able to drift this car. I'm gonna be honest, this is probably one of the best drift cars in the game, and it's insane again that it's taken so long for us to find out that this was an amazing drift car. But nonetheless, I hope that this was very comprehensive and helpful for you guys, especially if you're just starting out with Grand Theft Auto 5 drifting. This is definitely one of the cars that you should try out because it's so easy and so fun to drift. I definitely recommend this car to anybody because it's super low cost, it's great for drifting, and it's pretty unique as well because this is really the only electric car that I know of that drifts in this game. So if you have any others, definitely leave them in a comment down below and I will definitely try to feature that in another video. If you have any other suggestions for any other underrated drift cars, then definitely let me know as well for what you would like to see in a future video. Feel free to like the video as well, drop your opinion in a comment below, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Have an amazing day, everybody.